This is amazing. Trump 2024. This is really amazing here. This guy got 100,000 patriots to show up for President Trump's rally in Wildwood, New Jersey. This is amazing. Wildwood, New Jersey. Let's go look at the photo. It was taken by Doug Mills of the New York Times. Posted here. Look at this. At real Donald Trump during a campaign rally on the beach in Wildwood, New Jersey. This is amazing. Just want to make sure it's coming through. Look at this. Look at that. Now, just one photo, obviously, but there's so much more to this. So much more to this. So this is just great, and the comments are good too. The gaslighting isn't working. The people love President Trump. We might just save this country. On and on. You're going to see a lot of that. It was an amazing speech. If you have not seen that speech, please take the time to go and check that out. It was just another great speech by President Trump. And I haven't watched the whole thing. I watched about an hour. It's about an hour and 30 minutes, the full speech. And I've watched about 1 hour of it so far. And it is really good. A lot of it's the same stuff that we've heard. Kennedy is mentioned. I guess the governor of New Jersey, I believe it's the governor, had ran against a Kennedy, a female Kennedy. Trump doesn't mention who the Kennedy is directly, but that is one quote. Anytime he says Kennedy, I'm definitely taking it and adding it to the clipumentaries that I'm making. I've released one clipumentary, which is an hour and 48 minutes of mostly of Trump and Kennedy going back and forth, talking about each other. Then I have another one, which is called Part 4, which is a little confusing since the clipumentary that is 1 hour and 48 minutes is really parts 1, 2, and 3. So I put Part 4 out there. That's about another 41 minutes of them going back and forth. And there's already enough for a Part 5. So this will be a lot bigger than I thought, and I may end up going back and making some type of a final version once the book is finished and once the book comes out. But this was impressive. I mean, WrestleMania can't even get 100,000 people. Donald Trump can. This is powerful. This is great. This is awesome. I thought it was awesome. I don't know. I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are on it, but I think I move this camera down a little bit, maybe. That's a little better. Get that 2024 in there. Keep America great again. It's really one of my favorite shirts. I really like this one. This is by the company We the People Holsters. Definitely good. If you're looking for a good Trump shirt, it's worth it. Well worth it. They make it to order, but it fits. It's really fit. It makes me actually look like I have some muscles or something. Now, I have been just working out and everything, but it does hide my gut too. Make me look a little bit trimmer than and black always is going to do that, just by the way. Black shirts matter. So, just a really good day for President Trump with everything going on. He has not responded to RFK Jr.'s request to debate here on the 24th or the 25th. I do have one of those clips pulled up there too that will talk about that. I did want to talk about, originally, I wanted to talk about President Trump and going back to September 11th, 2001, and the comments he made directly after that and going on after that. But that video is still rendering. I don't think it's going to be ready in time for this. So that will probably be part of the next show. That's a 43-minute clip just by itself. So I don't think I'll play that here. I'll have to change the title of this one a little bit. So I figured, you know what, I wanted to make sure that I talked about that. I also wanted to go to Truth Social and play some of the clips that Trump has posted here, so I don't force you to watch here the whole hour and 30 minutes. But as he always does, he posts some of these main clips, short clips here, So that's what I'm gonna post a little bit, or just kind of walk through some of these videos and see how it goes. In New Jersey.
Say turn around and listen. It's I don't know why. Even the ones that are sort of like friendly to American, I'd say about 7 or 8%. But they're good. They're believers. But they never turn around, and I love that the show with God as far as the eye can see. I love the show. But they don't do it. And I use it because it's a mechanical problem.
So that's good. Just a 37 second clip there of just to give you the idea of how massive this rally is. This rally was. Here's another one.
USA, 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 USA.
There we go. Getting into it. But obviously, what we really want to see and hear is President Trump from his own words here. And he has a lot of clips. The snake, yeah, I've heard the snake one. This is an interesting one. I did not make it this far. I want to play it.
I just want to say,
Lawrence Taylor, baby.
I grew up a Democrat, and I've always been a Democrat until I met this man right here. I'll tell you what. He will not have to worry about nobody in my family ever vote for a Democrat again.
Okay. Lawrence Taylor.
Don't you just love that guy? Don't you just love that guy? I tell you, it has been a very exciting day. You guys, not one person left here. You're still here yelling and screaming. So my word is, Wildwood, are you in the house? Now I can't hear you. Wildwood, are you in the house? Thank you guys for all your support. And how about a great shout out for Metro Exhibit, baby? We made it all happen, all because of you. Thank you.
That's great. Let's go to another one. Instead of Joe Biden's weakness and chaos, we want peace through strength, like we had just 4 years ago. It's only 9 seconds, so I'll skip that one. Give me a longer clip here. We don't have to agree on everything, but we can agree that we want strong borders, not open borders. We want the American dream, not the Biden. I want the American dream, not the Biden inflation nightmare. We want safe communities, not defund the police. Yeah, I like that one.
We don't have to agree on everything, but we can agree that we want strong borders, not open borders. We want the American dream, not the Biden inflation nightmare. We want safe communities, not defund the police and abolish cash bail. How about cash bail? Of course, with me, they probably want bail. Let's get Trump to put, I'll be the only one in the country to put up bail. And instead of Joe Biden's weakness and chaos, we want peace through strength like we had it just 4 years ago. It's time to set and really what we have to do, we have to set high standards because this country has never been in a position like we're in right now. We're laughed at all over the world. Leaders that respected us 4 years ago are laughing at us. So it's time to set other differences aside and come together, get the job done for America. We're going to make America great again, and we're going to do it fast.
Right.
And we're going to look at Biden. I'm sure nobody ever saw The Apprentice. That was our big hit. That was a big, powerful hit. But I'm going to look at that guy and I'm going to say, Joe Biden, you're the worst ever. Joe Biden, you're fired. Get out of here. You're fired.
Great.
Get out of here, Joe.
That is great. Let's see if there's City. I'm sure he's got a few more. Oh, let me go back to here. I'm sure he's got a few more clips there. Let's see here. all across America, millions of people in the so-called blue states are joining our movement. I like that. Give me a longer clip here. I know he's got some. Maybe not. Maybe that's all we have. The crowd is just crazy. So if I can't find any more, I'll just play some of his speech here. Yeah, that's what I'll probably have to do. He hasn't posted that many clips yet so far, but they are coming. Hold on. Oh, what's this one? It's that one's still rendering. I don't know why sometimes this happens like this, where they're still rendering. I mean, this is crazy. Just think about this. Again, 100,000 people. WrestleMania can't do that. The Super Bowl, can they do that? You know, I know there's some stadiums that can hold that many, but that's huge. In 2024, that's a huge number. 100,000 people. And we'll wait for the fact checkers to see if that's accurate or not. Sure. We'll trust in them. Good day for President Trump. Well deserved in New Jersey. Fighting this weird court case here, another just strange court case where it's just like these people will just not give up, and they're using the old playbook to go after this guy who seems the old playbook does not faze him. The old NWO playbook is not working on President Trump. So they'll make other moves. They'll keep doing what they do. Sometimes they just keep doing crazy stuff because that's all they know. Sometimes crazy just only knows how to be crazy. That's it. They don't know any better. They don't know how to do anything else but be crazy. So we'll see how that works out for them. I'll be curious, and I'm sure you will too. Okay. Almost reached the half-minute mark here. Really just want to go about 30 minutes or so. Let me see if there's any other. This one I really want to play, I'm sure. I don't know what this is, but it's rendering, and I'm sure it's good. But it's rendering, so I don't know. I've had a few of those issues in the past. Let me see. Yeah, just spinning, get that circle of death. So I'll have to skip that, although I will just play some of the real speech here. Why not? Let's do it. Let's go for it. Just a few minutes.
Good
here.
God, man.
Of course. Get that the like there. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to go randomly 43 minutes. Let's see what
The electrical vehicle, but not the gas powered, which is the vehicle that everybody wants. So you don't have to worry about those plants if I'm elected. If I'm not elected, those plants are going to close up every automobile job in America. You won't be making one automobile in the United States of America. And the United Auto Workers, who, I'm leading in Michigan by a lot, because they're run by an incompetent man that endorsed crooked Joe Biden. And the first thing he does is sign this electric vehicle, this mandate, that where they're going to go crazy. They're going crazy with the electric car, costing us a fortune. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars subsidizing a car that nobody wants and nobody's ever going to buy. And it's just a shame. You see it. It's so stupid. And it's the same thing with foreign policy. Look at what he's doing with Israel. Look at what he's doing. This man is destroying our country. He's destroying our allies. And you know what? I was tough on our allies, too, because our allies always took advantage of us. But once I got them straightened out, it was fine. I mean, we had NATO, and they weren't paying their bills. And they said, well, what are you going to do? He said, Obama came in and he'd make a speech and he'd leave. Bush would come in, he'd make a speech and he'd leave. Trump came in, he made a speech and he went back. He said, you guys aren't paying your bills. And when I went back the second time, I couldn't do it the first time. I was in office for about two hours. You know, it's hard to go 2 hours. Like I think it was my second meeting was NATO. And it's hard to go immediately. But I said, I'll be back in about 6 months. And when I came back, I said, you're not paying your bills. And they looked at me, they said, well, you mean to tell me, because I said, you got to pay your bills or we're not going to protect you with NATO. And the press, the fake news went crazy. And you're talking about, hey, they screw us on trade. And then on top of that, we take care of their military. So I said, no, you have to pay your bills. And one of the presidents from one of the countries, 28 countries at the time, 28 countries, only 7 of them were paid up. The rest of them didn't pay. And the United States was paying much more than they should have, like by about 10 times. We were carrying NATO. So we get screwed on trade and we carry NATO. And I said, if you don't do this, we got problems. And one of them stood up and said, sir, do you mean to tell me that if I'm attacked in this very big country, if I'm attacked as a country by Russia, you will not defend me? I said, are you delinquent? He said, well, let's say I was. I said, if you're delinquent, I would not protect you. And you know what happened? And the press killed me because they said, oh, you've treated us so terribly. They respect you more. They like me more than they like other people. They understand. They can't believe they got away with it. For years and years, they got away with it. South Korea, we're paying for their military. We have 42,000 soldiers there. They pay us like nothing. I changed that. But now Biden, I understand, wants to break it. He thought I was too rough, and they're paying too much. They make a fortune. They took our shipping industry. They took our computer industry. They took so many different industries, and they're making a lot of money. They can pay for their military. And these are the things I was doing as president. Are you enjoying this? Let's get on to another subject. But Europe is being flooded with Chinese cars, and they don't know what to do. Right now, you know, China wants to take over the cars all over the world. They just want to make the cars for everybody, right? That's wonderful. But we'd like to keep our jobs, if you don't mind. But I'm not going to allow it to happen in our car and truck industry. We're going to make sure that our industry grows. It's going to grow like a weed. By the end of my 4th year, our car and truck industry will be triple the size of what it is now, and jobs will be flourishing. We will be setting records in auto jobs and truck jobs under Biden. It will all be gone. You will not have any car maker. That's a big, important industry, too. You can't lose it. You're going to lose it. They're going to lose it. I see what's happening already. And I think that's why I'm up, because the United Auto Workers and Auto Workers General are very smart people, and they see what's happening. And I'm up in Michigan, I believe, because of it. And I'm way up in South Carolina. In fact, I had we had a little skirmish with the governor, and did we win by 40 points or 50 points? And that's fine. That's fine. We get along with everybody. Crooked Joe has not just set our economy on fire. He has truly set the world on fire. If you want to know how a weak and pathetic president really is, I mean, the things they do, just think about this. This week he announced that he will withhold shipping weapons to Israel as they fight to eradicate Hamas terrorists in Gaza.
Yeah, that was bad. That was pretty bad what Biden said, but par for the course for that guy. Thankfully, it looks like the video, the 9/11 video did upload here. So I am going to kind of cue that up. Wow, okay. So I may actually get to play a little bit of that. I was going to look at some of the Kennedy stuff here. And, but, you know, let's go ahead. I did want to mention one thing here before I move on. This is about Lawrence Taylor. For people that don't know, another wrestling connection here with Lawrence Taylor. That Lawrence Taylor actually fought at WrestleMania 11. Lawrence Taylor did, which is pretty interesting there too. So again, and we know that President Trump hosted WrestleMania 4 and WrestleMania 5 back to back, but at WrestleMania 11, Lawrence Taylor actually fought Bam Bam Bigelow. I'm not going to play it because I don't know I don't even want to risk any of that, but I thought that was pretty interesting about Lawrence Taylor. And actually, I was reading, I've been reading President Trump's book, The Art of the Deal. And Lawrence Taylor, I believe, is mentioned in the USFL, the United States Football League. It's an interesting story, especially for anyone who is curious about the actual XFL way back when. So pretty interesting, and that's at the end of Donald Trump's book where he talks about the USFL, and back in the 80s it seemed like, and pretty interesting. So I want to ask my dad, kind of maybe get his thoughts about the USFL during that time, because some of the names like Herschel Walker and I believe Lawrence Taylor too, there was some type of deal that Trump had, the art of the deal with Lawrence Taylor. So some fascinating stuff, some connections that just, this is why I loved to listen to all of his speeches, because you never know what you may find. You never know what you may learn here. And let me go. I do want to share a little bit of some Kennedy stuff. Not too much news. I like what Kennedy says here. I applaud Libertarian Party for inviting me and President Trump to their convention. This country needs more communication across ideological divides. I look forward to exploring areas of affinity, particularly our mutual commitment to freedoms enshrined in the Bill of Rights. But what I did not like is the Libertarian Party, what they say. Okay, I like this. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to speak at the Libertarian National Convention. The Libertarian Party is excited to welcome independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Friday, May 24th, for Friday's main address and a brief audience Q&A. I applaud the Libertarians for inviting me and President Trump to their convention, said Kennedy. This country needs more. We just read that. Candidates of all stripes are converging on our national convention, and we're excited to have the strongest independent candidate come speak to our delegates, said Libertarian National Chair Angela McArdle. Serious contenders realize Libertarians are the most sought after voting bloc in the country. We're here to nominate our own candidate, but we welcome the opportunity to measure our ideas against independent voices, and Kennedy has been a great friend to us over the last year. Few interesting things here. The serious contenders realize Libertarians are the most sought after voting bloc in the country, and they're going to nominate their own candidate, who is not going to be a serious contender if it's not going to be Kennedy, if it's not going to be Trump. So how serious of a contender could that person possibly be? I guess we will see. And it's hard because I don't want to knock. I love the idea of giving people other choices, and I don't want to say, hey, don't go with one of these guys, go with either Kennedy or Trump. But, I'm just not really interested in any of the libertarian candidates that they have for their party. We'll see what they can do. Can they make a dent? Can they do what Kennedy does? Because Kennedy has set a new precedent, I believe, for a new standard for all third-party candidates of how to do this right. Third-party people, they were libertarians, the Green Party, they've been doing this for a long, long time. And here comes a guy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Yeah, he's got the Kennedy name, but here comes a guy who can do it right and can make waves, and maybe it's just the right person at the right time. But that also shows that the libertarian candidates are not appealing to people. And that's what I'm finding out here, especially when I read a little bit further here. And this is what really triggered me. The theme for the 2024 Libertarian National Convention is become ungovernable. Well, you're running for the highest office in our government. Isn't that a little hypocritical? Or, isn't that it just an oxymoron or something? It just, there's something wrong with this theme here. Become ungovernable. Vote for this person to get into the government. I don't understand it. I don't get it. So it's, for me, I've never been a libertarian, never really understood it. I listened to Jesse Ventura kind of criticize the Libertarian Party, and now I see even more reasons why that I would never consider myself a libertarian. When they talk about government, they talk about we the people. We the people is the government. But this is what they say. The theme for the 2024 Libertarian National Convention is become ungovernable. This was chosen following the previous years of unconscionable authoritarian actions by the United States federal and state governments, which saw citizens confined, indoctrinated, lied to, and inoculated against their will. The citizens of these United States must become ungovernable to regain their basic rights and freedoms. That seems just ridiculous to me. It's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. So anyway, I'm glad that they're having both Kennedy and Trump there, but just more reason for me to not even pay any attention to the Libertarian Party. Alrighty. With that said, let's get into the main event, which is 9/11. This is what I want to hear about.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for
Let me pause that a little bit. I went back and I was trying to find stuff. I was trying to find the quote that I actually put in my book, to be honest, in my 9/11 book. The way that the book starts out is with a quote from President Trump from 2001 about 9/11. So I went back and I wanted to find that quote. And I did. I eventually did find it. I actually found more. I was like, I should have added this, should have put this in there. And then found all this other stuff here. And it ended up being about 40 minutes worth of information that will probably be its own chapter in the Kennedy and Trump book, because Kennedy has talked about 9/11 briefly, a little bit. Very powerful stuff that Kennedy has said about Building 7. But what President Trump says, then just the mogul Donald Trump says, is even more powerful. And what's even more striking right now, and I think this was what a lot of people, the criticism that they give Kennedy and Trump about 9/11 as well. Why we want more 9/11 truth stuff here, and they're not giving it to us for whatever reason. So if they don't think that that is mainstream, but JFK is, RFK Jr. is very vocal about his views on his uncle, JFK. We want to hear more about the views about 9/11. RFK Jr. will say he hasn't really researched it that much. Remember, Donald Trump was right there in that area when 9/11 happened. And he has some very controversial stuff, especially from 2000 when he was running for the highest office in the greatest country ever. Donald Trump had some very choice words, some interesting words that he got criticism for, which is laughable, that I didn't really research, didn't really look into that much. I was more interested in what is Trump saying now that I'm paying attention to him. So there's a lot of stuff that I missed. And this 43 minutes, I'm obviously not going to play the whole 43 minutes, but I'm going to play some of this here during this show. And I really want to keep these shows to about 30 to 1 hour, but I'm going to play some of this. I titled this, I just put this out, Trump 2024, 9/11. Again, nothing new, just a lot of information about what Trump has said about the World Trade Center 2001.
Good morning.
Good
How are
morning.
you? Thanks for joining us on the Monday morning show. And most of you sitting through the city with an inch and a quarter of rain.
Inch and a quarter?
Inch and a quarter. That was the rainfall total for the
Wow.
park. Walk over to the wall. We'll show you what it looks like. This shot showing you lower Manhattan. And everything is actually in pretty good shape now as we work into clear. But for us, bright sunny skies, 65 degrees at 7 o'clock in the morning, and sunny and pleasant for the rest of the day, 80 degrees. It's kind of a guilty pleasure, as beautiful as this weather is going to be. The 5-day, look at this, 78 degrees on Wednesday. Thursday, I think I'm even overdone with the clouds there. I think it turns out to be a little bit nicer. Friday, very nice. Saturday, beautiful, cool, pleasant days.
I had one.
BuzzFeed dug up an old quote from Donald Trump talking about a large-scale terror attack 19 months before 9/11. In his 2000 book, The America We Deserve, Trump wrote, "I really am convinced we're in danger of the sort of terrorist attacks that will make the bombing of the 1993 Trade Center look like little kids playing with firecrackers." Trump also mentioned the mastermind of the attack, writing, quote, "One day, we're told that a shadowy figure with no fixed address named Osama bin Laden is public enemy number one, and U.S. jet fighters lay waste to his camp in Afghanistan. He escapes back under some rock, and a few news cycles later, it's on to a new enemy and a new crisis."
We are having some technical difficulties, which is totally understandable when you try to do, ad hoc reporting and getting information to you as fast as we possibly can and making sure that it's accurate at the same time. So
Donald Trump is on the line. I mean, we know him as the man behind lots of real estate in Manhattan. And of course, Donald, I understand you were actually a witness to what happened this morning.
Well, I have a window that looks directly at the World Trade Center, and I saw this huge explosion. I was with a group of people, and I really couldn't even believe it. And even, I think, worse than that, for years I've looked right directly at the building. I'd see the Empire State Building in the foreground and the World Trade Center in the background, and now I'm looking at absolutely nothing. It's just gone, and it's just hard to believe.
Donald, Alan Marcus here. Your building is, the Trump Tower is one of the great tourist attractions in the world. It's well known universally. Are you taking any precautions there in light of what happened at the World Trade Center?
Well, Alan, we've always had, as you know, very, very strong security, but there's very little you can do about planes crashing into a building. I mean, you look at Larry Silverstein, who's a terrific owner in New York and a very good friend of mine who I just called. I was very worried about him, because I assumed maybe he was in the building. He took possession of the building 1 week ago. As you know, he just bought the World Trade Center.
Right.
And he was in his office, and he was getting ready to move into the World Trade Center over the next 2 weeks. So, and I just spoke to him. There's nothing you can do when people are going to be bombing planes at your building. Now, I guess maybe the world is going to be changing, and maybe you're going to have F-16s flying all over the city, etc. But it's a pretty tough situation.
Donald, you have one of the landmark buildings down in the financial district, 40 Wall Street. Did you have any damage, or did what's happened down there?
Well, it was an amazing phone call I made. 40 Wall Street actually was the second tallest building in downtown Manhattan, and it was actually, before the World Trade Center, was the tallest. And then when they built the World Trade Center, it became known as the second tallest, and now it's the tallest. And I just spoke to my people, and they said it's the most unbelievable sight. It's probably 7 or 8 blocks away from the World Trade Center, and yet Wall Street is littered with 2 feet of stone and brick and mortar and steel, and there are thousands of people walking over the debris over the Brooklyn Bridge, where they're sending them out over the Brooklyn Bridge to Brooklyn, and then I guess they're going to have to figure out how to get home from there. But they have between 1 foot and 2 feet of debris right in front of a building that's probably, you would say, Alan, 6 or 7 blocks away.
Donald, this is Roland Smith.
Hi, Roland.
How you doing on this kind of day? At some point, we're going to put all this behind us. And you, as a visionary, particularly in New York real estate, what do you think that we ought to do as a city, as a people, when all of this when the mourning stops, when the dead are honored, and we've found out what caused it and maybe corrected it? What does the city need to do?
Well, I guess the big thing that you really will have to do is never forget. You just can't forget that something like this happened. I was so disappointed when they closed the stock exchange, but of course, at some point, you had no choice, when they initially announced it was closing, because you want to just say, the hell with it, you're going forward, nothing's going to change. But the fact is, something has changed very dramatically. And I think one of the very sad things is going to be when you look at the skyline of New York, which has become so emblazoned in your own memory, and you look at the skyline of New York and you see these buildings, these 2 buildings, whether you love them or don't love them, they were a great part of the skyline. And then when you look at the skyline after 2001, and you're going to see a skyline without these 2 buildings, you're going to say, what happened? People won't believe it. When you show your children or your grandchildren in years to come what New York looked like in the year 2000, and then what New York looked like just a year later, they're going to say, what happened?
Hey, Donald,
it's hard to believe.
in the year 2000, Donald, you considered running for president. If you had done that and if you had been successful, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
Well, I'd be taking a very, very tough line, Alan. I mean, most people feel they know at least approximately the group of people that did this and where they are. But boy, would you have to take a hard line on this. This just can't be tolerated, and it's got to be very, very stern. This is, as you and I were discussing before, Alan, this was probably worse than Pearl Harbor. Many more people are dead, and they don't know, they have no idea, but I have somebody that was down there who witnessed at least 10 people jumping out of the building from 70 and 80 stories up in the air. I mean, you probably have 25 or 30,000 is the number I've heard, but I would think would be much more than that. I think the most of the damage will be caused not by even in the building in terms of the people dead, but by the people on the streets from falling debris.
Donald, you're probably the best known builder, particularly of great buildings in the city. There's a great deal of question about whether or not the damage and the ultimate destruction of the buildings was caused by the airplanes, by architectural defect, or possibly by bombs or aftershocks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it was an architectural defect. The World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation. And it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747 or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall. Most buildings are built with the steel is on the inside around the elevator shaft. This one was built from the outside, which is the strongest structure you can have, and it was almost just like a can of soup.
You know, Donald, we were looking at pictures all morning long of that plane coming into building number 2, and when you see that approach the far side, and then all of a sudden, within a matter of a millisecond, the explosion pops out the other side.
Right. I just think that it was a plane with more than just fuel. I think, obviously, they were very big planes. They were going very rapidly because I was also watching where the plane seemed to be not only going fast, it seemed to be coming down into the building. So it was getting the speed from going downhill, so to speak. It just seemed to me that to do that kind of destruction is even more than a big plane, because you're talking about taking out steel, the heaviest caliber steel that was used on a building. I mean, these buildings were rock solid. And, it's just an amazing thing. This country is different today, and it's going to be different than it ever was for many years to come.
Very profound statement and very true.
Donald, one last question for you. Given the magnitude of how much of American commerce took place within the Twin Towers, what do you, as you're an expert on this, what do you think is going to be the fallout over the next several weeks, months, and even years, given what we have lost in terms of those buildings going down and all that was within it?
Well, I, as an example, Alan, and you might use them too, but I have an insurance company that was on the 102nd floor of the World Trade Center. They're gone. I don't know who's gone. I don't know anything other than their offices are no longer there. They're wiped out. The Morgan Stanley Group, Morgan Stanley, a big, powerful firm, they had 50 stories in the building, gone. I mean, you're talking about some firms that are just gone. Now, Morgan Stanley, in that case, had a lot of its offices in Midtown, and they had about half downtown. Morgan Stanley's a big, powerful firm. They're gone. Many firms had.
It's so interesting to hear this. And if anyone hasn't heard this, or if you're unable to find this full clip, please let me know. It's definitely out there. Hopefully it'll stay out there. But it's so fascinating because this is a big deal, that what Trump is saying about bombs in the building, and it's just, to me, it's fascinating stuff. I hope it is to you too. Very powerful.
Had all of their offices, as you know, in the World Trade Center. It was 8 million square feet. 8 million square feet is the size of some cities. And we had 8 million square feet, and there were 4 million in each building.
This is also the same day as the towers dropped.
They were huge buildings, not only in height, but each floor was 50,000 feet. They were monstrous floors. Each floor was almost a city in itself, and they had 110 floors or so. So, many firms that were easily recognizable for those of us in the financial world, for those of us that read the papers and see the financial pages, they're going to be gone. I mean, they're just not going to exist anymore.
If this what he's saying here, in listening to the whole clip, if what he's saying here does not convince you that Donald Trump knows that there's some strange things that happen on 9/11, then nothing will.
But they're gone.
Donald Trump.
Many of the people are gone with them.
Donald Trump, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you
We
all.
really
Good luck.
appreciate it. Thank you. Same to you.
You too.
Our prayers are with everyone.
Guten Abend nach Berlin. Wir stehen hier ungefähr 4 Blocks vom World Trade Center entfernt, oder das, was davon übrig geblieben ist.
Those were,
Und neben mir steht
Going forward, nothing's going to change. But the fact is, something has changed, very dramatic. What New York looked like in the they know at least approximately the group of people that did this and where they are. But somebody that was down there who witnessed at least 10 people jumping out of the building from 70 and 80 stories up in the air. I mean, you probably have 25 or 30,000 is the number I've heard, but I would think would be much more than that. I think the most of the damage will be caused not by even in the building in terms of the people dead, but by the people on the streets from falling debris.
Donald, you're probably the best known builder, particularly of great buildings in the city. There's a great deal of question about whether or not the damage and the ultimate destruction of the buildings was caused by the airplanes, by architectural defect, or possibly by bombs or aftershocks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it was an architectural defect. The World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation. And it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams. When I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747 or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall. Most buildings are built with the steel is on the inside around the elevator shaft. This one was built from the outside, which is the strongest structure you can have, and it was almost just like a can of soup.
You know, Donald,
bombs in the building.
Well, we were looking at pictures all morning long of that plane coming into building number 2, and when you see that approach the far side, and then all of a sudden, within a matter of a millisecond, the explosion pops out the other side.
Right. I just think that it was a plane with more than just fuel. I think, obviously, they were very big planes. They were going very rapidly because I was also watching where the plane seemed to be not only going fast, it seemed to be coming down into the building. So it was getting the speed from going downhill, so to speak. It just seemed to me that to do that kind of destruction is even more than a big plane because you're talking about taking out steel, the heaviest caliber steel that was used on a building. I mean, these buildings were rock solid. And, it's just an amazing thing. This country is different today and it's going to be different than it ever was for many years to come.
So it's a fascinating statement by President Trump, and I'll play some more of this here for maybe another couple minutes. Yeah, so powerful, and I'm so glad that I put that at the very beginning of the book. That's probably one of the last clips that I found when I wrote my book 9E11. And now I feel like I should have probably added more in that, but I never seen this full clip here, the full thing here, and I'm sure it's been out there for a while. I know it's been out there for a while. So listening to that, watching it, just brought back a lot of memories, and I'm sure it does for all of us. But it was a very powerful day in the New World Order's war that we face here, and it's all tied. And things like that will make you a threat, because Donald Trump was one of the best builders, and not that he would build it with his own hands or anything like that, but he is, he would, if you look at the buildings that he built, it's his money. He's making it happen. He's not doing the physical building himself. Just like they criticized him for being down at ground zero and helping. They were acting like he was a first responder, which is not what he was doing, not what he was saying. So anyways, that 43-minute video is out there for right now. If YouTube doesn't like it, I'll put it on Rumble. It will be on TikTok. A shorter version will be on TikTok. And the first 30 minutes of this, to me, is just flashbacks, going back, making sure things don't go down the memory hole. As we know, that is exactly what certain people want to happen. So I'll move forward a little bit on this, and I do want to get to this. This interview is kind of weird because this looks almost fake. Look at Donald Trump's face here. That face is too much, man. That face is too much, and it just looks AI. It looks like they're standing in front of a green screen or something. I don't believe they are, but it's just, this whole interview is. And I think this is a French interview. I don't know. Duncan, maybe. I don't know. Dutch, whatever. Here it is.
Und neben mir steht Donald Trump. Donald Trump hat selber einige Gebäude in der Gegend. Ich werde ihn kurz dazu befragen. Mr. Trump, do you have any interest in the area down there that has been affected?
I have a lot of property down there, but it was unfortunately affected by what happened to the World Trade Center.
Ich habe eine Menge Gebäude dort unten, aber Gott sei Dank ist es von diesem Terroranschlag nicht in Mitleidenschaft gezogen worden. What's your biggest fear, Mr. Trump?
Well, I just went to what they call ground zero. I've never seen anything like it. The devastation, the human life that's been just wasted for no reason whatsoever. It is a terrible scene. It's a terrible sight. But New Yorkers are very strong and resilient, and they'll rebuild quickly.
Ich habe noch nie so eine Verwüstung gesehen. Ich habe noch nie so eine Verwüstung menschlichen Lebens gesehen, eine Verschwendung menschlichen Lebens. Aber New York wird damit fertig werden mit so einem Terroranschlag. Mr. Trump, what should be the response to this attack? How should the U.S. respond to such a devastating?
Well, I think they have to respond quickly and effectively. They have to find out exactly what the cause was, who did it, and they have to go after these people because there is no other choice. And then secondarily, and much less importantly, we have to rebuild in some form that will be just as majestic as the World Trade Center.
Also die USA müssen auf diese Verwüstung, auf diesen Terroranschlag so deutlich wie möglich und so schnell wie möglich antworten. Und vor allen Dingen sagt er, wir werden wieder ein Gebäude bauen, was noch majestätischer ist als das World Trade Center. Will you be involved? Will you take any efforts, any steps to reconstruct the area?
Well, I have a lot of men down here right now. We have over 100, and we have about 125 coming. So we'll have a couple of hundred people down here. And they're very brave, and what they're doing is amazing. And we will be involved.
And they're all breathing this air. Look, they're all down here, and we know all the people, the first responders, all the people in this area, they're breathing this air that they should not be breathing. They're all down here, slowly dying. A slow kill. It's very sad.
Helfen, diese Gegend wieder aufzubauen. Der sagt, er hat einige 100 Leute bereits dort, und es ist erstaunlich, was sie bereits geleistet haben. What kind of cost would you estimate to rebuild this area? How much money has been lost in the attack?
I would say $15 to $20 billion. You're talking billions and billions of dollars, and it's irreparable. But I really feel that the location is such and the importance of the monument is such that we have to rebuild. And again, not necessarily in the form of the two towers, but something has to be done that's very big and very
That's an
majestic.
interesting thing right there that he says. He just said, I want to replay that a little bit. What he just said, this is very important.
But I really feel that the location is such and the importance of the monument is such that we have to rebuild. And again, not necessarily in the form of the two towers, but
not necessarily in the form of, this is what he's saying in 2001, because later he's going to say we need to rebuild the two towers, which I completely agree with. That's what they should have done, not build this Freedom Tower. But it's interesting that a day, I believe this is September 13th, 2001. He's saying not necessarily, but obviously he's leaving that door open and he will try to push that. I wonder how Trump feels about the Freedom Tower today.
something has to be done that's very big and very majestic.
Er sagt, ich habe ihn gefragt, wie viel wird es kosten, diese Gegend wieder aufzubauen. Er sagt, es wird Milliarden kosten, zweistellige Milliardenbeträge. Aber wir sollten es nicht so aufbauen wie das World Trade Center mit diesen beiden Türmen, sondern eine andere Form finden, etwas gleichsam Majestätisches. A lot of people ask, how is it possible that a Boeing plane would be able to destroy or two planes would be able to destroy the Twin Towers, because they were constructed to withstand like a 707.
Here we go again.
Well, it's tremendous power and
Bombs in the building.
tremendous heat, and people were willing to die. And when they're willing to die, and when they're willing to become kamikazes in a sense, there's very little you can do about it. I mean, the heat and the power. Actually, it was amazing that the initial jolts didn't jar the building as much as people would have thought, but the tremendous amounts of fuel that was dumped on the building and 1,600 degrees temperature, I guess that's probably more than anything could take, no matter what.
Interesting. So here he is 2 days later, reversing his story, going from I think there must have been bomb, there must have been something else. And so that's why that first interview is so powerful, because it's always going back to what they first say, right? And sometimes those are the most powerful things. Those are the most real things before they start to backtrack. And Donald Trump is not a politician at this point, but he is a businessman who has businesses. And once it comes out and they say, because remember when Donald Trump made that the first radio interview, that 11-minute interview, that's raw. That's him before we even know what happened, before the official narrative started to grind and started to push and say, no, this is what happened. And you can see 2 days later, once that is what they say, what happened, Donald Trump is kind of stepping back and saying, okay, well, that much heat, that much fire is what brought these towers down, which is complete bull crap. There's absolutely no way. So you can see, and this goes back to every school shooting, everything like that happens first. You always look at, okay, what did they say when the shooting first happened? What did the people say then? And they can retract it and they can change their stories later. And it seems like that is exactly what Donald Trump did, is he changed his story. He's backtracking. He's not saying this is exactly what happened. This isn't what happened. And he does this even to this very day here, where he's walking this fine line of not saying, and Kennedy does this with COVID, and Trump does this with COVID too, but they do this with certain topics here. I've seen them both do this. And but it's what did they first say, especially when this thing first happens. So when the towers first dropped, Trump is talking about it could not have just been structural steel, right? And then 2 days later, he's saying that it pretty much is structural steel that brought it down. It's the heat, the planes and the heat and all that stuff that brought these towers down. He's not talking about building 7 either. So we definitely got some questions that need to be answered, but it's fascinating information. And these are some of the things that a moderator should bring up in a debate against President Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It probably won't happen. These are things that I would want to be brought up, These are very powerful things. I want to talk about. Let's talk about JFK. Let's talk about 9/11. Trump is more focused on the Iraq war because later on we're going to see when the tide turns and everybody's starting talking about the Iraq war and going after Bush, Trump joins in with that fray too. He joins in with that same mentality of going after Bush for 9/11. He's responsible for the wars, et cetera, et cetera. But it's those very first clips that Trump is saying about the possibility of bombs in those buildings, that he can walk it back. But this is a very smart guy, just like RFK Jr. These are two very smart guys. These guys know. These guys have to know. If Richard Gage, if they just look at some of the work that Richard Gage has done, AE architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, if they just look at some of the work that they've done, it's fascinating stuff. It is science-based. It's all science-based. It's all factual-based. It's physics, right? And if they just look at those things, they can get a good idea of why so many people are questioning 9/11. And I truly believe that both of them, more privately, are questioning it because they're not going along with the official theory. And by that token, that's a good thing. By just them saying, they're keeping an open mind to it, is what it seems like to me. I could be wrong. On that, but that's what I see. So let's move along here. It's a good video.
Kann es denn passieren, dass diese Gebäude von einem Flugzeug zerstört werden? Die Twin Towers waren gebaut worden, um auch dem Ansturm einer Boeing zu widerstehen. Er sagt, es ist die unglaubliche Hitze, die sich entwickelt hat, die Aufschlagkraft, das Benzin, was diese Gebäude zu Fall gebracht hat. Man kann gegen solche Dinge nichts tun. When do you think we will start to rebuild?
Well, I would hope it would really be very quickly. A lot of great genius people in the city, and I think that within a shorter period of time, first we have to get rid of what's there, and we have to save as many lives as possible, if that is possible. Today they found 5 people under the rubble, which is amazing, alive. But after that process takes place, I think they can start thinking about rebuilding, absolutely.
Ich habe ihn gefragt, wann werden die Wiederaufbauarbeiten beginnen. Er sagt, wir müssen erst natürlich das Leben retten und diese ganzen Aufräumarbeiten vonstatten bringen und dann.
I think those 5 people that he's talking about are the 5 firefighters that Trump will mention in a separate interview after this. And I think those are I've never seen the movie The World Trade Center from Oliver Stone, but Oliver Stone's movie about 9/11. I've never seen it, but I think that's what this is talking about. Just a guess.
Gleich beginnen, wieder aufzubauen. Vielen Dank, Mr. Trump. Thanks a lot. Ja, danke.
Starring Nicolas Cage, of course.
Now, just a few moments ago, Donald Trump passed through here, so we had a minute to talk with him. Let's roll that tape. You can see what he had to say.
Well, I've never seen anything like it. I've seen 2 huge 110-story buildings that are reduced to rubble. Thousands and thousands of lives. I just got to see something that I've never seen before. I have hundreds of men inside working right now, and we're bringing down another 125 in a little while, and they've never done work like this before. And they're hardworking people, but they've never seen anything like it, and they've never done work like this before. It's terrible.
Tell me what it's like at Ground Zero. Tell me about the workers that you saw and what they're doing there.
Well, not only is it devastation, but it's very dangerous because every few minutes a whistle would go off and everybody would just run because you have all the buildings around it, which are in such a weakened state that people just don't know. And so they just have to take off. And then they come back and they're working under 50-story buildings that you don't know if they're going to fall down. So it's a terrible thing for the workers, and it's a terrible thing for the world, really.
How have you spoken to any of your men? Do you know how they're reacting to this? Because emotionally, this must be so incredibly difficult.
Well, there are a lot of them, but they've never seen bodies like this. I mean, the bodies all over. The great thing is when they find somebody that's alive, like the 5 firemen that they just found a little while ago. So that's the great thing, and that's what they're all striving for. But generally speaking, that's not the case. So they are working very, very hard, but it's a very depressing situation for these folks.
As you walked around and as you saw the piles of rubble, there are thousands of families out there who are hoping that someone might be in a pocket somewhere, still alive, still breathing, waiting to be dug up. As you assessed that damage from your perspective, do you believe that's possible?
Well, I would certainly not want to be the one to say it's not possible. Certainly, it's a tough situation, but you can't give up hope because there's always hope. I mean, the 5 men, I'm sure their families thought that they probably were gone, and now they walk in the door. A couple of them walked away after they were dug out. So there probably are some more people in there, and therefore you can't give up hope.
You've had an impact on the skyline of New York. What is it like as you see it now?
It's like a whole different skyline. It's like a whole different city and world. I cannot believe the sight of Lower Manhattan without the World Trade Center, and therefore we have to rebuild, not necessarily in that form, but we have to rebuild at least as good and maybe better.
Just finally, can you tell me emotionally as you walked around, we've heard some of the stories from the firemen. They're so exhausted and mentally and physically. What was it like for you personally to go in and see all of what you saw?
Well, it was amazing to see it. It was a very depressing scene, but I'll tell you what, you really can take heart. These firemen and policemen and the construction workers equally, the courage they have is unbelievable. I mean, they're working, digging out and lifting up steel. And above them, you have 55-story buildings that are very possibly going to be pouring down on them any minute. And they're working like nothing's wrong. I mean, they're amazing.
Okay, now we're getting into one of the most fascinating stories. This is going to one of the most fascinating parts of this whole story for me, because I remember all of this, and I remember when they were talking about, what do we do? Do we rebuild these towers, or do we just leave it? Do we just level it and just leave it the way it is, et cetera, et cetera? And then this Freedom Tower, they wanted to build one tower. And I remember Donald Trump was one of the first people, if not the first person, that said, no, we need to rebuild these towers the way that they were. And let me tell you, so many things are that's a huge red flag for the NWO, obviously, because if they rebuild it in the same way, they would probably come to the same conclusion that, wait a minute, there's no way that 2 planes could have done this, could make these, because they would look at, okay, what caused the planes to bring these towers down, and how do we make sure that doesn't happen again, which is a good thing. But they would likely come to the same conclusion that, wait a minute, so they were built to withstand planes coming in, which should have been like a screen netting going into it, and that didn't happen. So it would raise a lot of more questions, and I don't think that they wanted that. I don't think that they wanted the towers to be rebuilt, because that's the reason they brought them down, for a reason. But it was so fascinating to see Donald Trump get up there, as we're going to see, and say, no, we need to rebuild these things the way they were. That's it. That was great. That always stood out to me. That brought was music to my ears. Let me go ahead and play this. A little more from the AP.
It shouldn't be a commercial development. It really should just be a park. Just grass, trees, a place for meditation. He really isn't interested in that kind of thing, I don't think.
Here we go.
Good morning. Welcome to Trump Tower. It's an honor to have all of you with us. If we rebuild the World Trade Center in the form of a skeleton, Freedom Tower, the terrorists win.
This is Trump's plan here. Rebuild them the way they were.
We want to rebuild the World Trade Center as the World Trade Center, but better.
Yep.
A little bit taller, a lot stronger, just plain better.
What's wrong with that? Instead, this is what they want.
That's it.
Thing is ugly. There you go. They said no. This is what they ran with. This is what they went with instead of doing what they should have done. And in this way, at some level, the terrorists, whoever the real terrorists are, they did win. They wanted the towers down. They got them down. And we did not rebuild as we should have.
I watched when the World Trade Center came tumbling down. And I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering as that building was coming down. Thousands of people were cheering. So something's going on. We got to find out what it is. I do want surveillance.
Something's going
I
on.
will absolutely take database on the people coming in from Syria if we can't stop it, but we're going to. And if I win, I've made it known, if I win, they're going back. We can't have it. They're going back. We can't have it. We can't have it.
Donald Trump is doubling down on claims he made over the weekend that he saw thousands of Muslim Americans in New Jersey celebrating after the September 11th terror attacks. Trump first made the remarks at a rally Saturday and then stood by them Monday night at an event in Columbus, Ohio.
During a speech recently, I said that I saw in parts of New Jersey, Jersey City, but parts of New Jersey, I saw people getting together and in fairly large numbers celebrating as the World Trade Center was coming down, killing thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people. People are still dying over what happened to the World Trade Center, and they're dying a terrible death. And I saw people, and I saw them on television, and I read about it on the internet, and I read about it. So they said, oh, we can't find anything, Mr. Trump. The reporters are calling all day, all night. They want to find out, did Trump make a mistake? So I have some good people. And they checked and they checked. And believe me, it's being cleared off, plenty of stuff. They don't like that because that's not good for the liberal cause, right? But they don't like it. And lo and behold, I start getting phone calls in my office by the hundreds that they were there and they saw this take place. People. So one of my people comes in. This is a story from the Washington Post on September 18th, a week later, 2001. In Jersey City, within hours of two jetliners plowing into the World Trade Center, law enforcement authorities detained and questioned a number of people who were allegedly seen celebrating the attacks and holding tailgate style. Tailgate, you know what that means? Tailgate. That means football games, Ohio State.
Tailgate. He's talking about the Israelis, the dancing Israelis who were there who were watching this. Who it seems like there's evidence that they were waiting for it. They may have had foreknowledge about it. This is what President Trump is talking about. He may not even know what he's talking about here, but he's talking about a very powerful issue. If you look up the dancing Israelis of 9/11, I put this in my book too. There's some great information out there about these people, who they are. Very fascinating stuff. But they were not Muslims. They were Israelis.
Thousands of people in parking lots, on roofs. Tailgate is a lot of people. Tailgate's not two people. And holding tailgate-style parties on rooftops while they watched the devastation on the other side of the river. Okay? Washington Post. Washington Post. So they've come in, and we've received hundreds of phone calls in my office because it's become sort of a big subject. And they want to try and deny it, but you can't deny it. Many people in this room heard about it, probably saw it. And, you know, the sad part is we're all sort of on the same side, whether you're liberal or conservative or Democrat. Or
You know what's really crazy is that they didn't go after Trump for his comments about saying that, hey, there must have been bombs, there must have been that. That was taboo to even go there. It's like this was a part of the script that with even Trump, it was off limits. Yeah, you can go after him for 9/11, but don't go after him for mentioning that there may have been bombs, there may have been something else that brought those Twin Towers down. That's a fascinating aspect of this whole thing to me.
We're sort of on the same. We want our country to be great again. That's what the whole thing is, right? It really doesn't make sense. But fortunately, somebody in the Washington Post wrote that, and they'll try and deny it. They'll probably say, well, we made a mistake, which I almost like that better. Then I could show you how dishonest they all are. I might like that better. Let them say that. But they'll find some reason to deny it. They'll call it a typo. It was about it was a very long and winding typo. But they'll try and deny it. But I don't think they'll be able to. Not with the smart people, they're not going to be able to.
Thanks, Shane. With us, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Continuing now with Donald Trump. As you may know, he said that he saw thousands of Muslims in New Jersey celebrating after the 9/11 attack. We investigated and came up with a very interesting report from WCBS TV 5 days after 9/11.
Is another apartment building, one that investigators told me, quote, is swarming with suspects. Suspects who I'm told were cheering on the roof when they saw the plane slam into the Trade Center. Now, police were called to the building by other neighbors and found 8 men celebrating, 6 of them tenants in the building. Other terrorist task force agencies then arrived, and the older investigators on the task force recalled that they had been to this building before, 8 years ago, when the first World Trade Center attack led them to Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman, whose Jersey City mosque lies between the two buildings getting attention today.
Now, I played that report from Mr. Trump yesterday while telling him we could find no other videotape germane to the issue. So no videotape about, you know, thousands of people celebrating doesn't exist. And we really looked everywhere. I mean, it's just not there. But there were people celebrating. Mayor Giuliani confirms in New York it happened. Mr. Guzman confirms in Jersey it happened. So does the Jersey State Police. So you were wrong by saying thousands, but it did happen. What say you?
Well, I don't know that I'm wrong, Bill. You know, this just came out from Breitbart. I mean, literally, it just came out. Trump vindicated, 100% vindicated. And this just, I mean, literally, I'm just seeing it now. So I don't know that I'm wrong. There are a lot of people. You know, we don't have cell phones today with the cameras on them. I mean, if we did, I think you'd see something a lot different. You look at what happened recently, a week ago, with the soccer game, where they had a minute of silence for the people that were just absolutely, it was horrible what happened in Paris. And they had honoring those people, a minute of silence, and you heard shouts from the Muslim world at the game that were horrendous.
What country was that?
The coaches were embarrassed.
Do you remember what country that was?
Excuse me?
Do you remember what country that was?
It was a different country.
It was
Turkey.
Turkey.
That was a different country. But I'm just saying.
Okay.
It was Turkey. I'm just saying. There's great hatred out there.
Nobody's disputing that.
People aren't acknowledging it.
Where you get into trouble, with all due respect, of course, is what you give a speech and you say things like, I saw thousands, and there weren't thousands. Now,
but you don't know that there weren't, Bill. Bill, you don't know what there were.
I was here, I was reporting, and believe me, if there were thousands, that would have been reported. But what I'm trying to get at is
they were swarming. Bill, this article says they were swarming all over the place.
Right.
So I don't know what that means, but it means a lot of people.
There were some people, not thousands. Now, but what I want to get at is this. You're giving a speech tonight.
that, Bill.
Virginia.
Bill, you don't know that.
I'm
Bill,
pretty.
You don't know that.
I'm pretty confident.
All right, you're pretty sure.
All right,
You're pretty
right.
sure. You don't know that.
And you
Bill.
know that
This
I'm always
is
right.
Swarming all over
You
New
know
Jersey.
I'm always right. So take it to the bank. Okay. All right. So you go to Virginia, and you give a speech tonight. Okay. Do you have that speech printed out, or is it an ad lib speech?
Well, it would be so much easier to just read off a teleprompter like our president does, where he reads a teleprompter because he can't do anything else. I like to not do that. I have thousands of people. The other night we had 15,000 people. We had 12,000 people.
Right.
I like to do extemporaneous.
Right?
You know why?
Right.
It's more exciting.
And it's more.
And you know the other thing about it?
But you get into
the other thing about I can talk about current events. I can talk about things that took place 2 hours ago. I can talk about a soccer game if it was played and people were screaming horrible things and it took place an hour before I go up. And frankly, it's much more exciting to speak for the people, for everybody, even for me. But
I understand
now,
that.
To do that,
I
you
do
need
that
an
as well.
extraordinary memory and you need lots of ability to be able to speak in front of 20,000 people without a speech.
And
but
you have that.
I think it's much better.
But here's what happens. Sometimes when you're up there, you get overly excited and you're speaking extemporaneously. And then you say things as anybody would, because the crowd is cheering and everything's going wild, that you don't know to be true, but you believe to be true, but you don't know it. So that's the risk as a president, all right? When you're out there as a man who wants the most powerful position in the world, you got to kind of be careful in those speeches because that's what gets you in trouble. Do you get my point?
I would love to read speeches off of a teleprompter. It is so easy to do. I would even love to read speeches, period. But you know what? You don't get the same excitement. You don't get the same feeling. And I haven't made very many mistakes that I can tell you. You know, when I announced and when I talked about illegal immigration, all of a sudden the world went crazy and thought it was terrible. 4 weeks later, I was #1 in the polls because everyone realized I was right. In fact, it was about 1 week later. But I was #1 in the polls, and now I'm #1 in every single poll. A big one, you'll hate to hear this, but the big one's coming out, CNN tomorrow. I don't know how it's going to be, but I look forward to that one. But we're #1 in every poll, including the Fox poll, very important.
But I'm just saying that
and we beat Hillary. By the way, Bill, and we beat Hillary head to head.
And I'm sure she's thrilled for that. With responsibility, okay, with the responsibility that you're seeking comes personal responsibility. And when you say something, you got to be pretty damn well sure that it's accurate and it's not hyperbole. That's the point I'm trying to make, and I'm sure you understand. But
I've had very few complaints, Bill. I've had very few complaints, and we get the biggest crowds by many, many times, and we get far bigger crowds than anybody else.
Because you're so charismatic.
We have a great, you know what? We have a great time with a tough subject because there's not a lot of good news happening with the United States. You understand that better than anybody. So we have a great time, as good a time as you can have, with subject matter that's not so pleasant.
Always very fascinating to talk with you, Donald, and we always appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Next to the race for 2016 tonight, Donald Trump and what he said today about 9/11, about the World Trade Center, and former President George W. Bush. Those words drawing a quick response from Jeb Bush at this hour. ABC's Tom Llamas on the campaign trail.
Tonight, Donald Trump making a bold accusation against former President George W. Bush, implying Bush is to blame for 9/11.
When you talk about George Bush, I mean, say what you want. The World Trade Center came down during his time. If you look
Hold
at
on,
Sandy Hook,
you can't blame George Bush for that.
he was president, okay? Don't blame him or don't blame him, but he was president. The World Trade Center came down during his reign.
The comments made during an interview with Bloomberg TV after Trump was asked if he had the compassion to handle crises like 9/11 or the Sandy Hook shooting.
Help us understand who Donald Trump is as a man. I need to know that you will make us.
We're in Sandy Hook world here too. All right, fascinating there, my friends. I'm going to shut this one down. Went about a little bit, 20 minutes over than what I wanted, but I'm going to come back. And in the next show, we will continue on. There's still about another 10 minutes of some more information here, but hope this was relevant and helpful. And this will definitely make it in. Some of this will make it into the book because Trump's view on 9/11 is fascinating to me. And him wanting to rebuild the towers as they were is also a great thing. All right, with that said, God bless you all. Just remember, Jesus Christ loves you.